what the heck? Is it because I am black? You took an oath to serve and protect, but you choked the life out of me. I would just like to say it is fearful living in Los Angeles County with a sheriff that believes he's above the Community Oversight Commission. I want more to be done to demand that he is aware and listen to what you guys are saying and take action. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Narek Mia Khan. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering, as our sheriff continues to ignore this commission, if there's anything that us as citizens of this county can actually do to help this commission enact the things that it actually wants to do.
And next we have Alexander Powell. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. My name's Alexander Powell. I'm an LA resident. Obviously, heard a lot of the similar comments over and over, and we should be listening to many of the action items being put forth by organizations like Black Lives Matter and Reform LA Jails. So while it is great that you said that you want to hear from the community, quite frankly, the community has been speaking for years and has plenty of action items to get forward or to put forward. We need to decarcerate our prisons right now, in particular with the COVID-19 outbreak. And it also should be noted again that it is particularly frustrating that the LA County Sheriff Villanueva has ignored, dismissed, and accredited the subpoenas issued by the Community Oversight Committee, given its legal power passed by Measure R. So it's a little dubious how we're supposed to institute any sort of police reform when he and Police Chief Moore and other law enforcement dismiss the severity of our community's call for action. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Julia Korber. Julia?
How do I miss that? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. My name is Julia Kerber, and I'm a student of epidemiology at the UCLA Public School of Public Health. And I'm someone active with public health. I'm incredibly frustrated at LA not taking further efforts to decrease the jail population to immediately stop the spread of COVID-19. And in addition, in my own community of Westwood, I've been horrified to see the massive militarization of the police force and how they have escalated tensions amongst protesters and themselves inspired violence. I want the Civilian Oversight Committee to immediately investigate the Sheriff's Department for any escalation that we're seeing in our crowds. I yield my time.
Thank you. And Erica Castro, I see that you've signed up for public comment, but there's no ability to unmute you. Perhaps there's an issue with your mic. We'll move on to the next person. Molly Savard, please go ahead with your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You were getting feedback, sorry.
We do hear you, Molly.
I can hear you. But I'm listening.
Molly Savard, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Moving to the next person. Next we have Gina Viola. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll be brief. While I am impressed at the movement of including a statement about George Floyd from Minnesota, I'm questioning where your resolutions and statements are for John Horton, A.J. Weber, Anthony Vargas, and Ryan Twyman, and others that have been killed in Los Angeles by sheriffs and have had zero accountability. Also, Commissioner Bonner, your commitment to white supremacy is showing. That's all I have.
Wow.
And next we have Jordan Jace. Jordan, it looks like I do not have the ability, excuse me, to unmute you. We will go ahead with the next person, Audrey. Please go ahead with your comment. Huh? Audrey George, please go ahead with your comment.
Okay, this is Audrey from White People for Black Lives. Ways you can really honor George Floyd. Stop saying the pledge at the beginning of your meeting. Condemn all use of force, past and present and future by the LASD. Decarcerate your jails, especially due to the COVID. And I also wanted to just mention, you brought up in your statement something about opportunistic people using opportunities to take advantage of George Floyd's death. The only thing I've seen that was opportunistic was city and law enforcement officers using it to justify increased budgets for LAPD and LAUSD. I think you should remove any mention of that type of opportunistic language in your statement.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Tupe Astia. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, my name is Tupe Asiata, and I'm a resident of Los Angeles County. I wanted to address that there's been an ongoing issue with, police brutality and police corruption in Los Angeles County for years now. And this is the reason why I feel that Care Not Cages and the Measure R should be really implemented for our community so that we can get process and order back in our communities. It's such an injustice to hear that we have to hear more crimes and use George Floyd's situation to ignite conversations to better our communities. We have over 600 families that passed away with no convictions on police corruption, and this is the reason why Jackie Lacey must go. She should be out of office, and this is why it's so important for our communities to vote in November. I'm done.
Thank you. And next we have Kathleen Hendrick. Kathleen, please go ahead.
Hello. So I'm an engineer and I'm a resident of downtown Los Angeles, and I have witnessed firsthand the brutality of the LAPD against my fellow Angelinos this past week. I know that this is a pattern of injustice, especially against the Black community, that has resulted in over 600 dead at the hands of LAPD. I think we all as Angelinos seek and we deserve police reform and moving towards decarceration and de-escalation of violence towards a public safety organization founded in education and investment in our Black and brown communities. We need to see a regular, quantifiable action towards your reform. Without the end to police brutality, we cannot function as a city, and our important initiatives like climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and COVID-19 response will be fruitless. Thank you. I yield the time.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Mariela Alberges. Mariela, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, good morning. This is Mariela Alberges from Reform LA Jails. I thank the commissioners for their statement on the murder of George Floyd, and I'm grateful to hear that the COC is committed to solutions. However, we believe that the impactful and sustainable solutions can only be done if communities that are directly impacted are involved. We ask the commissioners to create a space for these dialogues beyond the virtual meetings. The time limitations of 1 minute do not do justice to the onslaught being experienced by our communities and the life-saving interventions needed now. We also ask that for the immediate repeal of the curfew and to conduct an independent investigation of the excessive use of force at the hands of the sheriff department against peaceful protesters. These attempts to intimidate will not work and need to stop immediately. We ask for the demilitarization of the police force, divestment from police unions, and the reduction of the sheriff's budget. We need reinvestment into our communities and community-based systems of care, such as those recommended in the ATI report, not militarized law enforcement terrorizing and caging our people. Our community's hearts ache. We collectively mourn the families of George Foreman.
Thank you for your comment. And next up we have Joseph Mayeselich. Joseph, go ahead.
Yes, hello. This is a tough thing to have a statement first and then to rewrite it. Maybe you folks actually, for the next statement or this one, could have a meeting at which each one submits their concerns and then frame it that way, because this is disassembling and then repairing. I like the idea of taking Dr. King's quotation that's near the end and put in that first paragraph where you say, to those who are taking advantage of his pain and anguish, condemn your actions. I think you can substitute and put Dr. King's remark right in there and follow it with the statement of we understand our role is to help that community voice be heard, and so that and something along those lines that would include the statement but not feature it at the end, which I understand Judge Bonner objected to. Otherwise, it's just tough to do a statement like this. I do like the idea of having the general equality of the society mentioned.
Thank you for your comment. And next we have Elizabeth Kibbe. Please go ahead with your comment, Elizabeth.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have written in my comments, which the majority of which are in solidarity with all of the demands of Justice LA regarding the poor conditions of the jail and immediate release of inmates. But to the point of this statement on George Floyd, my demand of the commission is one, to take off the word anarchy. You can use the word chaos. I would respectfully request that you call George Floyd's murder a lynching, because that invokes the legacy of slavery that is law enforcement across the country. Also, I need you to call out the 601 civilian deaths in LA County at the top of this statement to remind everyone who reads this that this is happening here and now. And I also want to echo the requests of other speakers to call in more voices and give more opportunity to more diverse voices to come to this commission and strengthen the commission. Okay, we need to do more.
Thank you. And next we have Laurel Forrest. Please go ahead, Laurel.
Hello, I'm not sure, is my mic on?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I'll make it really short. Thank you very much for providing this resolution, and I would hope that you could issue it in perhaps maybe a scaled down form, followed up maybe by next month with more detailed comments. However, I do think that it should include all the victims and not just Mr. George Floyd. As other speakers have said, that this is a rampant, inherent fault in police departments and sheriff's departments nationwide, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Thank you very much for your great work. I'm undone.
Thank you. And next we have Mona Ligbani. Mona, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Mona Ligbani. I'm a community-based pharmacist in Los Angeles County, and I'm a mother, and I'm a child of parents who immigrated to this country, and I stand with the Black community of Los Angeles. I have suggestions for the statement that you read that I felt was weak. I think that the title should be changed to the lynching of George Floyd and the murder of 600 men, women, and teenagers due to police brutality. I think that needs to be incorporated in the title of this statement. I think that the part that says little has changed, too little has changed is not enough. I think it should read much too little has changed. We should not only be focused on inequality in all forms must be eliminated as it's stated in the statement, but also police brutality must be eliminated, and I encourage you to adopt that into your statement. And I'd also like to call on the Black members of this commission, stop accommodating to the white men and women that sit beside you at this table. I yield my time.
Thank you. And next we have Luke Metzler.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'll make it quick and to the point. I think there's been too much hand-wringing from this committee. Like, this is a crossroads in history. You know, in the past week, we've seen LAPD shooting from their vehicles at teens walking away. and escalating situations and violence all over the city and county. This is not the time for hand-wringing. Rob Bonner especially. Like, if you're more concerned about the looting violence than the violence that's been perpetuated by police, we're out of touch, man. Here's what I demand from y'all. Whether you think you can directly intervene in this situation or not, please use your voice to get Black Lives Matter LA to the bargaining table when we're really going down. We're not coming for $150 million. We need severe reductions in LAPD's budget. Secondly, you must call for Chief Moore's resignation as well as Jackie Lacey's. That will mean a lot coming from y'all. It would help so much. With all due respect, we don't need more police resources or oversight. We need true reduction in budget and transferring that to community initiatives. LA, but people but LA.
Thank you. And next we have Emily Iverson. What's your comment, Emily?
Hi. So, I think just to start off, the fact that we are even so out of touch in regards to language that was put into this statement shows that we are in no position to have the members of this committee, who are predominantly white, as well as the county in general, who are predominantly white, discuss this. Like, if you're using words like Anna to disenfranchise and just to talk against the plight that the Black people are experiencing in this country, you should not be giving your opinions and creating laws if you cannot even get the basic language right in a draft of a statement. That shouldn't even be in a draft. And I know that's why we have these discussions, but the people, if you're someone in a position of power using this language still, to devalue Black people, you're just in the wrong instantly. That's something that needs to be put into place to make sure that people in power are getting the right education from people in these committees to even begin to create laws and policies and action against it.
Thank you. And next, we have Amy Igarashi. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a college student and I grew up for most of my life in LA. I'm coming today to demand accountability for the killing of Dennis Todd Rogers. I think the LAFD's proposed changes to the use of force policy in light of AB 392 is doing everything but hold accountability to the LAFD for Dennis Todd Rogers and the other innocent Black lives that were killed by them. I'm extremely bothered there was a settlement approved by the LA Claims Board this April for $1,300,000 for the lawsuit filed by the family of Dennis Todd Rogers, and I want to see more corrective action plans taken. The LAFD claimed that there was a lack of MET staff the night that Dennis Todd Rogers was killed. I don't believe innocent citizens should be getting killed because we don't have enough MET staff, and the proposed changes to AB 392 take responsibility away from the Sheriff's Department. Lastly, I want to say I condemn Deputy Ryan Ima for his actions, and I'm asking my fellow agents to address the anti-Blackness within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Alec Boyle. Please.
Hello?
Alec, please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted specifically to say that I do not believe that the sheriff should have the authority to enact countywide curfews. I believe it's inappropriate in LA City, and it's borderline criminal in the outlying towns. And I would like your commission to publish information about the best way for us to go about removing that authority from the sheriffs. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Next we have Dana Thomas. Please go ahead with your comment. Dana Thomas, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
I've already given my comment. I yield my time too.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And next we have Ann Fisher. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a victim of crime, and I have been following the system and learning about the system. I want to make it clear that we can't fire Jackie Lacey. We must vote her out in the election by voting for George Gaston. My suggestion is, because I had such corruption seen by the LAPD and it filtered over to the Sheriff's Department, that they were able to write my victim's report. And I was not able to review those reports, get copies of the reports, or sign those reports. When I finally found out what those reports were written, all of the crimes had been mischaracterized and eliminated. So we have got to find a way for victims, not only for body cameras to be put on at all times so that the victims' voices and the actual crimes are recorded, but for the victims to be allowed to read those reports and sign those for accuracy. And so those police reports and the men have all the voices, and they rely on the statements to cover up. We have a really big issue with accountability and transparency.
Thank you. And next we have Kiyu Sugiyami. Please go ahead with your comment. Kikui, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I want to support again all the other folks who mentioned this is not about a murder. This is about a lynching. And beyond it being a lynching, and beyond this being about justice for the folks who are harmed, not just in the last week, of whom there are many and most Black, but the lives of our community. We're fighting so that people can live without abuse and harmful neglect by law enforcement and the government agencies that have any power over the law enforcement, but also so that we can have support for our Black and brown and entire communities, for fighting houselessness, for fighting a lack of education. There's so much that we can fund here. This is not about just George Floyd. This is about our lives. I see the rest of my time. Thank you.
And next we have Kristen Studard. Kristen, please go ahead with your comment.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I think that I appreciate the statement that you guys are wording and putting together. I would love to see this oversight committee be armed with some more teeth to affect change. I agree with all the past commentators who said that this is about more than George Floyd. I would love to see you guys turn on your cameras. I can't see many of you. I agree also with past commenters who said it's time to bring BLM LA to the table and that Chief Moore must resign. I believe that we need to really start the process of defunding the police department and reinvesting in the community, diverting. This is about more than extra trainings. This is about taking the time to really rethink policing and how we view the Sheriff's Department in general. This is rotten to the core. It is time to rethink how we do policing in this country, and especially in the city. And I thank you for creating a place for us to speak.
Thank you. Next, Melody O. Melody, please go ahead with your comment.
Good morning. I'm in support of what Reform LA Jails is proposing, and I support the statement of many who have already voted.
Melody, I'm not able to hear you anymore. Can you move closer to your microphone?
Can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
Thank you. I think actionable items such as taking steps to defund, not just reform how police function, but defund, take our money out of having more policing and put that towards housing the homeless, protecting small businesses, providing school resources. I'm a teacher, and we need more for our children, for our communities and youth in a constructive and beautiful way, build tenant protection, expand mental health care, and provide free transport, and build a community of care in place of policing. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Adam Smith. Please go ahead with your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, good morning to everyone except just those who don't see the hypocrisy in starting a conversation about anti-blackness with a pledge of allegiance that is a relic of institutionalized anti-blackness. I can appreciate the fact that the commission is putting together this statement about George Floyd. I appreciate the words, especially by Commissioner Ocean, the idea that real change needs to happen here in LA. I think it's critical for groups like this commission to make statements like this, but I think it's important that this statement not cloud the fact that Black folks here in LA County, Latinx folks here in LA are brutalized and killed with horrifying regularity by the Sheriff's Department. With all due respect, all the well-intentioned statements in the world won't take back the sheriff bullets that stole the life of A.J. Weber, a 16-year-old child, or those that riddled Ryan Wyman or Anthony Vargas. Words don't and will never stop the actions of the Sheriff Department. When using words like riots and looting, let's not forget the everyday looting of Black and brown families and communities that the Sheriff Department continue to do and that this statement won't do anything about. The County of LA needs and deserves a radical shift away from the violent anti-Black and anti-brown culture inherent to the Sheriff's Department. F you, Alex Villanueva.
And our next comment comes from Michelle Infante. Please go ahead with your comment.
Morning, Commissioners. I just want to say that I'm kind of appalled. I'm actually appalled at Commissioner Bonner and his statements with regards to the letter. You're playing semantics over people who've lost their lives. They don't care about semantics and particular words in that letter as long as it talks about police brutality, police brutality, police brutality. We didn't hear from J.P. Harris because Commissioner Bonner decided to speak for him, and I think the community needs to hear how he feels about that letter. How about this? Why don't we let the people of color write the letter? They are the ones who can have the most impact, and they'll let you know the words that belong inside that letter. And on the top of it, why don't you write George Floyd 600 times if you're not going to put the other 600 people who've lost their lives to police brutality in the county of Los Angeles?
Wow.
Thank you. And the next speaker will be Jordan Jace.
What's my turn?
Please go ahead with your comment, Jordan.
All right. Dear Oversight members, Michael Moore and Jackie Lacey are garbage. Fire Moore. Adopt the suggested action items proposed by Black Lives Matter and decarcerate prisons now. Black lives have always mattered. The foundation of this country was slave labor, and the police force's inception was a slave patrol. It's no different. You all ignored the 600 plus murders of Black people by LAPD. Defund police and stop parroting the voice and legacy of Dr. King when you have no interest in eliminating policing, which would free up money to advance the material conditions of our community, rather than militarizing the police and supporting a military occupation in response to riots, which are a viable response to a government without conscience that is shamelessly indifferent and even invested in the deterioration of the Black community, namely through policing and the prison industrial complex. I will have little respect until it is apparent the city is invested in the health of our community. That's all.
Thank you. And next we have Kane Ortega. Kane, please go ahead with your comment. Kane Ortega, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Unfortunately, we are not able to hear you, Kane. I'll be going to the next person now. And next we have Tara Ashe. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, I'm new to LA County, but in the short time that I have been here, I have seen police act in heinous ways against its citizens, specifically against its Black and brown citizens. Riot gear is the regular uniform for officers at Black Lives Matter's peaceful protests. Violence have been perpetuated by police, and over 600 people, predominantly Black and brown, have been killed by the cops, with over half of our budget in the last 7 years. Jackie Lacey must go, the people's budget must be adopted, LA County jails must be reformed, and the police must be held accountable for their brutality against their citizens. G4 must resign, and ultimately Black Lives Matter must have not one, but many seats at the table to invoke change. I yield my time.
Thank you. And next we have Marcela Hernandez. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, yes, good morning. I'm a resident of the San Gabriel Valley, and I really urge you all that this statement addresses what's happening here in LA County and also makes demand the accountability and justice for the 601 people that have been murdered here in LA County by police brutality, the resignation of DA Jackie Lacey, to stop the use of force and violence on protesters, to divest from the police and invest in our communities, to demilitarize the police force, and to demand an immediate incarceration of the LA County Jail to save lives and for the public health communities. Also condemn the use of force by LAPD, the curfew that's currently in place, guard, ICE or CBP. This is a direct pipeline to jail, detention, and deportation. We see that even in detention and deportation, Black immigrants are detained and deported at higher rates, and also to take the lead from Black Lives Matter. So, thank you.
Thank you. And before I announce our next speaker, if you have an intention of doing public speaking for this and you have not been called yet, please go ahead and send a chat to the host or raise your hand. Otherwise, this will be, it looks like we have some folks already doing that. So our next speaker will be Alexis Takahashi. Please go ahead with your comment.
People have made to not just address George Floyd, but this over 600 murders by police that have happened in LA County. The statement needs to call for actions to defund the police, to stop the use of gang databases, which is part of the racist history and legacy of the war on gangs, and also to have major reforms to use of force. I think additionally, like looking at how police have been using violent tactics against protesters recently, such as using tear gas, pepper spray, that actually increase the transmission of COVID-19, as well as just like the massive over-arrests that are putting a huge public health risk to everyone by cycling people in and out of the jail system, which we know are major hotspots for COVID-19 transmission. So everything that our LA County Sheriff's Department is doing is making our community less safe, even though they are saying that what they're doing is for public safety.
Thank you. And the next person to comment will be Madam Talker. Please go ahead with your comment. Yes.
As a commission, you need to make it your primary mission to advocate for reallocating funding from the police and sheriff's departments to mental health care, drug treatment services, supportive housing, and community programs. We are past reform efforts that only give more funding to LAPD and LASD. Actually providing services to vulnerable members of the public is the most effective, most cost-effective way to make our communities safer and won't result in the mass murder of Black people and other people of color. In the immediate future, I urge you to demilitarize the police and sheriff's departments and end all curfews. These actions do not enhance public safety or de-escalate tensions. It's merely an excuse for overinflated police budgets and a permission slip to conduct mass arrests that disproportionately impact Black and brown youth. I cede the rest of my time.
Thank you. And the next public comment will come from Anne Metcalf. Please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. I would like to echo all the calls that you all include the demands of Black Lives Matter, Reform LA Jails, and Justice LA into your statement. I also would ask you to call George Floyd's murder what it is, a ruthless police lynching, and acknowledge the over 600 deaths by the hands of police in our county. I echo calls about defunding the police, firing Jackie Lacey, firing Chief Moore, but more than that, I ask you all to reflect on whether you're functioning as a PR cover for state violence, to paint it over, or whether you're going to really advocate for a different system. Thank you.
Oh, there they go.
Thank you. And next,
look, my people.
Kristen Stewart. Please go ahead with your comment. Kristen Stewart, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Hearing nothing, we will go to the next person. Nora Slade, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Nora Slade. I'm a resident of Los Angeles, and I'm calling to demand the accountability for the racist murder of George Floyd and the lawlessness of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, which I've been witnessing firsthand this last week. These are not people that are out there protecting communities. They feel like a gang of people that like get off on harassment and violence, and it's really scary. And it's like pretty shocking to see that, and I'm just wondering like what your role is. You're an oversight commission. Like, how can you not witness what is actually happening? So I demand that you call out George Floyd's murder for what it is and call it a lynching. And it wasn't.
Thank you very much, Nora. For the next commenter, we will have Christina Lewis. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the thing I'm going to say is Black Lives Matter. And I think it's disgusting the fact that LAPD is using such force on a group of human beings who are doing nothing but peacefully protesting and saying that they're only protecting the serving. The only thing that they're protecting is their fellow officer, and the only thing that they're serving is the ugly, wrinkly orange called Donald J. Trump. I think you guys should always listen to your civilians, because when you don't listen to them, it doesn't end well, especially for the Black community. I use my time.
Thank you. And next we will have Anna Cavasosos. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, I would like to request that Sheriff Alcantara is fired or recalled to be obstruction of the Office of Inspector General of Oversight. He should not be allowed to block their access to files remotely. He should not force them to go into the Sheriff's Department and not let them download files, only writing them down. That is obstruction of investigation, and I think amounts of removal. He should not be allowed to open an investigation into the OIG. That is a clear sign of corruption. I think the OIG needs more capabilities than just recommendations to the Civilian Oversight Commission, and what happens to those recommendations are something brushed off. I think they need charging capabilities for some higher level of accountability that they can use. I think officers found to be within the Banditos, Reapers, Spartans, and Regulators should be fired. They should not be transferred. Transferring no longer should be a disciplinary measure. It does not work. And then considering the FBI is investigating the LA Sheriff's Department, the deputies are fearful of speaking out, feel the problem is not solved, and there needs to be a major upheaval of the upper ranks of the LA Sheriff's Department. Background checks should not be scaled back under Sheriff.
Thank you. And next we have Judy Brandman. Please go ahead with your comment. Judy, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Okay, hearing nothing, we will go to Benjamin McPeak. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ben McPeak, Los Angeles resident. And as others said, I agree that this commission does sound like and feel like a PR team for the violence of the police. I think there needs to be drastic change happening. It seems clear that the people in power and people in this commission want stability, and the people and citizens want change. Everyone has made the statements of what needs to be done. I think it's clear that you guys just need to be working with Black Lives Matter and be supporting them, and I just yield my time.
Thank you. And next we have Avavina.
Hey, Anna, I have to make a public comment. One second.
Go ahead with your comment.
Hey, hi, I just want to echo all the concerns of my fellow community and demand justice for the Black community. George Floyd would be alive today if it wasn't for the abuse of power by the Minneapolis Police Department, and I just would like LA County to look within to fix its own problems. Some demands: providing funding and tangible support towards mental health care, drug treatment services, and community programs that offer alternatives to incarceration. Immediately beginning decarceration efforts in LA jails to save lives in future COVID-19 outbreaks. Divest from police unions citizens and sheriff departments and reinvest funds into black and brown communities, ending curfews and demilitarizing the police force that actually endanger the public and escalate tensions, and also asking to open an investigation into the widespread and systemic violence being perpetrated by the State Department on protesters that we're all watching. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And Judy, I'm going to go back to try to unmute you.
No, I'm so sorry.
Message. Judy, you are unmuted now. Please go ahead with your comment. And I apologize, Judy, perhaps the microphone is not working, but we're not hearing anything at all right now. So we'll go ahead to the next speaker. Gil, please go ahead with your comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Kim Andre Bunston, Woodrow Player, Derek Collins, AJ Weber, D'Angelo Lopez, Ricardo Lara, Eduardo Bermudez, Jonathan Cuevas, Jonathan Vargas, and everyone else killed by the LA County Sheriff's Department, as well as nearly 1,000 people killed by law enforcement.
Ahorita me pidieron que hable, pero me llegó muy rápido ahorita la oportunidad de hablar. Pero otra vez. Ajá. El día que ese policía mató a ese negro, que habían otros 5 negros que habían sido matados por otros negros. Ellos no se enfocaron en esos 5, se enfocaron en el 1. La hipocresía.
Hi, good morning. Many have already suggested actionable items. I just wanted to add that I asked that the Commission advocate for periodic community evaluation of officers so accountability is better translated into the public eye. Similar to how the STOLS Act for teachers, how they're evaluated periodically by their employers. It would be nice to have like required community outreach and schooling, ongoing schooling required for officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Emily Adshaw. Please go ahead with your comment, Emily.
Hi, thank you. The police in the city have used their power to harm and over-police black and brown communities, and DA Jackie Lacey has ensured no accountability for the 601 people murdered by the LAPD. We need to fire Jackie Lacey, investigate those murders, defund the police, redistribute funds to communities of color, including in healthcare, mental health care, and housing, and invite organizers from Black Lives Matter LA to the table to all following budget meetings. In the immediate future, we need to demilitarize the police and sheriff's department, and further, we are in the midst of a pandemic, and it is past time to engage in decarceration and empty our jails and detention centers. Thank you. I cede the rest of my time.
Thank you. And our next public comment will come from James Nelson. Please go ahead, James.
Yes. Can you hear me? All right, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I'd just like to say that, for all the reasons Justice LA and all other coalition partners been coming down there giving testimonies, if only way we're going to really get to the bottom of this, if we really want to rectify this problem, we still have active gang members that's a part of these police departments. So, like the shooting last night with the pepper gun, young kids stand out there not doing nothing, and they just ride up and don't say nothing, just start shooting at these kids. We really need to get to the bottom of this. People crying out because people is tearing up and burning down stuff. And I don't personally agree with it, but I understand it, right? Those are reactions to actions, and just like George is on the ground, man, being lynched. This grown man, cried for his mama that was already dead. So this is the community. This is the nation. that's crying out because nobody
Thank you.
is trying to rectify this issue. So this is
Thank
the
you.
only way.
And the next commenter will be Lauren Bennett. Please go ahead with your comment. Lauren, you are unmuted.
Firstly, I'd like to call out the brutal murder and lynching of George Floyd, as well as all of the LA residents who have been killed by police officers in our county under DA Jackie Lacey. We need to decarcerate the jails not only due to COVID, but because we are all well aware of the historically oppressive and racist justice system we are still operating within in the year 2020. I'm also asking to fire LAPD Police Chief Michael Moore. His comments were reprehensible. We must work to get rid of Jackie Lacey, prosecute every killer cop to get justice for the families of the 601 murdered at the hands of law enforcement here in LA County. I'll spend the rest of my time saying all too few of the names. John Horton, AJ Weber, Eric Rivera, Oscar Anaya, Anthony Vargas, Ryan Twyman, Daniel Navarro Jr., Ricardo Dimitri Condejas, Marco Antonio Hernandez, Frank Dario Lopez, Christian Escobedo, Cesar Bautista, Oscar Sandoval, Andy Lowe, Shalom Deek Smith, Santos Arias Nunez Garcia, Orbel.
And the next person for public comment will be Caitlin Krenz. Caitlin, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi. I echo those who have said that we need to call George Floyd's murder what it is, a ruthless police lynching. As far as the content of the letter, the condemning the actions, the people taking advantage of this pain and anguish are the police. We do not need to condemn the actions of the people. We need to condemn the actions of the police. You said yourself that it's about systemic racism, but you only mentioned George Floyd's name. We need to say his name, but we also need to take every opportunity to acknowledge the over 600 people who have died at the hands of LA law enforcement. I urge you to use this statement as an opportunity to mention the specific initiatives that the community has already invested in, defunding the police through People's Budget LA, Jackie Lacey Must Go, dismantling the prison industrial complex, community alternatives to incarceration. I urge you to call in Black Lives Matter, Reform LA Jails, and Justice LA. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Michael. Please go ahead, Michael. Michael, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Okay, hearing nothing, we will move to the next speaker. That will be Sandy Taylor. Please go ahead with your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Sandy.
My heart and energy goes out to the families who have lost brothers and sisters, moms and dads and children at the hands of state-sanctioned murder and at the hands of white supremacy. I'm speaking to fire Jackie Lacey, prosecute killer cops, and fire Michael Moore. Protesting downtown and walking by the detention center, people were banging on the building. This is disgusting that we are living in a military state which comes from a long history of colonizing. We live on Tonga land, and there are indigenous leaders who should be at the table. I yield my time.
Thank you. And our next comment will come from Anna Montgomery. Please go ahead, Anna.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
We hear you, Anna. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, this is my first time in a meeting like this, and there's just something that is arising is very obvious to me that the world right now is speaking the language of Black Lives Matter. They are around the world by the millions saying their names, using the words Black Lives Matter. That lexicon has taken over not just this country, but the entire globe. My question is, have you ever been to a Black Lives Matter meeting? Are you entrenched in that movement? Are you listening to their leaders? Because I know they come to your meetings. Are you going to their meetings? If you're not, I highly recommend that you verse yourself in their language because the world is speaking it. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Danielle Davis. Please go ahead with your comment, Danielle. Hearing nothing, we will go ahead with Ryan Moakley. Please go ahead with your comment, Ryan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So first and foremost, I want to call out the blatant lies that are being told to the LA public by both Michael Moore, Jackie Lacey, and by Mayor Eric Garcetti. They should be ashamed of themselves for lying about the use of tear gas and rubber bullets against peaceful protesters. We want our voices heard and we want to be at the table as we look to de-incarcerate those who are incarcerated and dismantle the systemic use of racism within our communities. We need to file Michael Moore and remove Jackie Lacey. I yield my time.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Vanessa Lopez. Please go ahead, Vanessa.
Hi, this is Jonathan for Vanessa. I am following
We're having a difficult time hearing you, sir. Could you move closer to the microphone?
Express my support for the concept of support that matters. Putting the police sounds like a radical idea to me, but I want to challenge everyone, including myself, that police have been the cause of violence and harm in the community, and if you want to see an end to harassing black people, you can't rely on things programs providing them. Those things have been implemented and have proven ineffective. You have to I don't think
Thank you. And the next person is Justin Curran. Please go ahead with your comment, Justin. Yes, Justin.
Okay, so my comment for today is I just a little loud and quick now. It's quite okay. I'm calling for the demilitarization of the police, calling for the acknowledgement of the 600 deaths at the hands of the police at the top of the statement that you're talking about today. I'm here to talk about the tragic death of Dennis Ted Rogers. Given the crossroads this country is in by way of systematic racism, LASD claimed that they had just 2 mental evaluation teams on call, and that is unacceptable. Dennis Ted Rogers would be alive today if there were more mental evaluation teams on call, but Officer Ryan Imaizumi killed him that night, and now the Sheriff's Department is trying to change the language so to make it easier to have less accountability via AB 392. We must begin defunding the police and Sheriff's Department and investing in our communities of color. I'm calling for the decarceration of LA jails to help mitigate the damage wreaked by COVID-19. I would like this committee to remove the authority of the sheriff to invoke a curfew for exercising their First Amendment rights. I'm also calling for more Jackie Lacey.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Allison Hoover. Please go ahead with your comment, Allison.
Good morning, everybody. It's really amazing to see the amount of power that's come behind this, and Black Lives Matter and are not going to stop mattering, so we need to continue to keep this momentum going for a very long time until we completely dismantle this system. That being said, I'd like to read on behalf of Black Grad Students Association some local demands that they want to see today. First, the lifting of countywide curfews as they infringe on our constitutional right to peacefully assemble. The immediate removal of the National Guard from the Westwood and Los Angeles areas as they also infringe on our right to peacefully assemble. The immediate reopenings of COVID-19 testing facilities in the LA area, and a direct change of the mayor's 2020-2011 budget to the People's Budget LA. Thank you. I yield my time. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. And next we will have Amy Wang. Please go ahead, Amy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Amy. I'm calling on behalf of everybody who has been harmed by the LA Sheriff's Department and all law enforcement in LA. I just want to uplift the fact that the first person who died from COVID in LA jails died this week. And in addition to everybody else that the sheriff and other law enforcement in LA have murdered, this was a murder as well. And this murder really puts blood on your hands, on the hands of the sheriff, on the hands of LAPD as well. So I'm calling on you to decarcerate and support the immediate release of all people from jails in LA County. And it's really time that you bring leadership from the community to the table, including from Black Lives Matter, Justice LA, and within LA jails. I yield my time.
Thank you. And next we have Jesse De La Cruz.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So at a time when the people are calling for defunding and demilitarizing,
Sheriff Villanueva has been out of touch with the gente of Los Angeles, arguing that the LASD is underfunded and understaffed. The narrative from the sheriff needs to change immediately. The use of force and violence against communities of colors is unacceptable, and the Sheriff's Department force has a long-standing history of applying cruel and unusual punishment. I call for the resignation of Jackie Lacey, and call for the Sheriff's Department to charge and prosecute those officers who have killed unarmed men and who have used drive-by style on our children. It is time that the people have a police force that are reflective of our local community and to hire officers that have lived experience and have felt the impacts of crime. We need formerly incarcerated leaders at the table now. We need formerly incarcerated leaders as our politicians. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we have Adam Pilarski. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes, I'd like to echo every call that's come before me in saying that this committee seems to be much more of a PR shield for the LAPD than anything else.
Adam, are you still speaking? We cannot hear you anymore. Adam, unfortunately, we cannot hear you anymore. We'll go ahead and move to the next comment. Alana Wrightson. Please go ahead with your comment, Alana.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. First, I'd like to extend my condolences to those who have lost their loved ones to racist and to police brutality. Next, I'd like to mention how wrong it is for your committee to excuse the acts of Chief Warren LAPD's power of authority to treat these protesters you yourself call anarchy. It's ignoring and invalidating the voices of Black communities and taking away from the issue at hand. I ask for the resignation immediately of Chief Moore and Jackie Lacey, who has justified police brutality, and as well as silencing us for our freedom of speech and practicing our First Amendment rights. I'm done.
Thank you. And the next comment, the very last comment that we will have is from Tamia Crane. Please go ahead with your comment, Tamia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you guys should pay more attention to the police officers you hire and see how you are going to bring the officers that kill hundreds of Black males and females to justice. Stop responding to what peaceful protesters are doing and start reacting to what precautions your officers are taking to quote-unquote protect the citizens, because they're obviously lying and doing the complete opposite. Fire Michael Moore for his trashy statement and defund the effing police department. The people that needs respect is the Black males and females who were victims of police brutality and killing, and the people who are fighting for us. I know my time.
Thank you. And that concludes the public comment, Patty.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I just want to reiterate that our oversight is with LASD, and we have absolutely no oversight at all with what the police commission does for LA City and LAPD. So I just wanted to, just put that out there. Let's see where we are with finalizing our statement and moving to adoption.
Richard, can you also add that Sheriff Villanueva and District Attorney Lacey are elected individuals? We can't fire them. The control of those two individuals are through the election, through the ballot.
Thank you for that. I believe they just heard you say that. that reminder. Yes.
I believe we should include in our statement, either in the title or somewhere else, about the huge numbers of LA County residents, Black and brown, who were killed as a result of actions by the sheriff's department. We've heard from families in the past, and while the horrific killing of George Floyd precipitated this, I think because we are LA County, that we should make some reference to whether we call it 600 or whether, however we do it. But I think it's essential that somewhere in this statement we include reference to those who were killed by LA Sheriff's deputies in LA County.
This is Commissioner Tolentino. I would agree. I don't think we need to add it in the title, but I think in the body of the first paragraph, where we state that we also remember the countless other men and women who have died and suffered because of an unjust system, and including many lives in Los Angeles County. I think that'll address the concerns, and I think we do need to reference that we are a LA County entity.
This is Commissioner Vera. I support that. I think you could say the hundreds of lives, but I like, I support the suggestion. I like the placement that Commissioner Tolentino is suggesting.
This is Commissioner Chen. I agree with the initial edits that Commissioner Tolentino put forward, as well as I think we should specifically name the number of folks who have been killed, not just by deadly use of force, by who were killed by sheriff's deputies, but also we should note that people are dying in our jail. I don't think we can overlook that when we think about what's happening now in our country and in the city of Los Angeles, the protests. It's not just about police shootings. It's about the complete and total disregard for Black lives in all areas of society. But when we focus on policing, we can't just think about what's happening when police patrol our communities. We also need to think about what happens when folks are arrested and put into dangerous facilities like the ones that we have here in LA County, which are the biggest in the world. So I just want to make sure that we lift up the fact that so many people right now, 12,000 people or more, are in our facilities and their lives are endangered, and their lives matter too.
Commissioner Thompson here, Chair Lady. I want to concur with the sentiments of all of the aforementioned. If we will include it one way or the other, whether it's numerically or in an overall general statement of acknowledging those who have died at the hands of LA County Sheriff, LA Sheriffs here in the county. However you word it, just include it that it's an acknowledgement from we as the commission who is aware and not turning a blind eye to those individuals that have perished at the hands of LASD.
Commissioner Bonner?
Yeah, I just want to caution here. I actually think we ought to keep our statement focused on the murder of George Floyd and on the issue of racial bias as it has impacted on the use of lethal force by police, particularly against Black Americans. And I don't think we, on this statement, should get into the COVID-19 issue or other issues. Let's make our statement, at least keep it on point. Anyway, that's my thought. Thank you.
What if we put the suggestion by Commissioner Tolentino to anchor an LA or LA baseness right after the paragraph, while we are angered and mourn the death of George Floyd, we also remember the countless other men and women who have died and suffered because of an unjust system. And maybe right there we could put that one sentence that anchors our work in our county right there. How does that
Might that work?
That works for me. I think the language I use, of which you can modify, is including the many lives in Los Angeles County.
That works for me, but I think it is, it should refer to, including the many lives, in Los Angeles County, who, have died because of actions of the sheriff. I mean, we are a Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission, and, we need to keep the sheriff in focus.
I agree with, Leo. I
So
think we need to be clear.
Okay.
I don't have any disagreement.
Okay, well, we have to frame that.
Yeah.
We just can't say who have died, to my mind. I think we have to have a little refinement there.
Madam Chair, if we're going to use the word many, I think we ought to know how many people have died from lethal force as a result of deputy sheriffs in the last year. I mean, I don't know whether it is many, and I mean, I just don't know. We don't have any facts in front of us here. How many are we talking about total? So I think we have to be careful what words we use unless we have factual support for them. That's all.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I suggest this language in the space where indicated? We also remember the countless other men and women who have died and suffered because of an unjust system, including those lost in LA County who have died because of illegal actions by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
That's good.
I would
like that.
Can I say, died seems a bit passive. Those people were killed. If we're talking about lethal force. Including those who were killed because of the illegal actions of the Sheriff's Department.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree as well.
As far as I'm concerned, one is too many already.
Brian, can you read?
I agree with that, but the question is, if you say, anyway, look, this is wordsmithing. I think we all, let's see if we can agree on a statement here.
Mr. Williams, can you restate
Sure.
that for us?
So the sentence would read as follows. We also remember the countless other men and women who have died and suffered because of an unjust system, including many lives lost in LA County. I'm sorry, including those lost in LA County who have been killed because of illegal actions by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Is that acceptable?
It's okay.
Okay, very good.
This is J.P. Harris, if I can.
Yes.
I agree wholeheartedly with the sentiment, without reservation. Terminology, they were killed illegally, to me connotes that we're saying that all of these acts were criminal in nature. I don't know if we can make that statement.
Well, since no one has ever been convicted, how can we make that statement, actually? I mean, you guys are the lawyers. How do we want to phrase it so that we are making the appropriate, these are all of this, everything that we're writing is referential. This is not a solution statement. We're hopefully our work in the past and even with deeply moving forward is going to be very solution oriented. Mr. Bonner has some lists that he can share with us. We don't have the time to go over them. Go ahead.
Sorry, Patty. I think we can leave the term in illegally, and it doesn't have to be adjudicated in court, as has been said by, so many speakers. these cases haven't been filed. The officers haven't been tried. So, it's left in limbo. There certainly is the belief, I mean, we're not talking about 600. We're talking about the many lives. And I think it's appropriate to say, killed because of the illegal actions of the sheriff's department.
This is Commissioner Thompson. I concur. I think the semantics, I think the progression of the language it speaks for itself. I think we're getting into the weeds. I think the phrase, the flow of that phrase that Mr. Williams have so coined. If he can regurgitate it one more time, I think you all, it's a waste of time. We're getting into the weeds. Died, killed, illegal. All of that suffice. All of that is the truth. I want to agree with Commissioner Ocean. I want to agree with Commissioner Rubin. And in some part, I agree with Commissioner Bonner in keeping this on George Floyd. But I also think that those that have been killed at the hands of the Los Angeles Sheriff Department should be acknowledged, should be mentioned, should be made reference of. I disagree with Commissioner J.P. Harris on this. I think the statements speak for itself, and let's get along. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, I concur. I think we could say many, and we don't know. I think that's the key point of the work moving forward. One of the things that has to change. Mr. Williams, read it one more time, please.
One more time.
Sure, that sentence would read, we also remember the countless other men and women who have died and suffered because of an unjust system, including many lives in LA County who have been killed because of illegal acts by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
I don't know how many got put back in there because we cannot say that. I mean, you just can't. Look, one life is too many, I agree. There were about 20 uses of lethal force by the Sheriff's Department last year. It's not 600. It's not. Some percentage of those were actually lawful. I mean, uses of force. So the only thing we can condemn here is excessive.
Can we take out
many?
Take out many and just make it, including the lives lost.
Yes, the lives lost.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There was a suggestion to take out anarchy and put confusion, I believe.
Civil unrest, I think, was the suggestion.
Although I think Commissioner Ocean might have said confusion. There were two commentaries on that.
No. I was not proposing that as a change. I'm fine with Commissioner Tolentino.
Civil unrest is the word I use.
The civil unrest. Okay, I'm fine with that. Everybody was fine with that? Take out anarchy?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to propose that we keep many in the sentence. And listen, I want to be adamant about this. This is not the time to placate. This is not the time to play nice. One of the speakers put it so appropriate. This is not the time for this commission to have a lack of aggression, to have lack of willpower to stand up against the powers that be. We know that it is many. Whether it has made the news, whether it has been adjudicated in the court of law, we know that it is many. Whether it is those of A.J. Weber, since the commission has been formed a couple of years ago, whether it is A.J. Weber, whether it is those that have died in the jail system, it is many. I have one vote on the commission, and if in fact, the majority votes to take out the word many, I will stand with the balance of the commissioners and respect the vote. This is not the time to walk a fine line. If so, you haven't gotten the message that the nation is sending to the powers that be. This is the time to take a radical stand. This is the time to be aggressive in our approach and aggressive in our language.
Commissioner Thompson, you have 2 votes. And I don't think it's even being aggressive or, to me, it's just it's a pretty short statement that many lives. And to me, it's not that worth battling over, but I think many lives is the better language.
You are, and
Commissioner.
And I say this to my fellow commissioners. If in fact we can't agree with many, this commission needs to be disbanded and we need new commissioners on this board.
That's not true. We said countless numbers and we're talking nationally, but if you're talking about, sheriff's department, you've got to use the correct words. I mean, we lose credibility if we don't stay with the facts. And
can I ask you a question?
I will change countless to many where countless appears if you want to put that in. But I don't think.
What's the difference between countless and many?
Well, read the language, Xavier. I mean, you have to read the language of the text, all right? It reads countless numbers of people have been killed by the police as a result of an unjust system. And then it says, and the sheriff's department has killed many people, and with an excessive use of lethal force. And we have to have factual backup for that before we can make that statement. Okay, so we're making 2 statements. Look at the document. We're saying countless numbers. If you want to say many instead of countless, that's fine.
Point of order.
Let's speak one at a time. Can we speak one at a time?
Okay.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Thompson right now because I believe you were trying to respond to Commissioner Bona. You have the floor, and then we'll go on to Commissioner Osen. Sir, with all due respect to your background, I am not a former U.S. attorney, but certainly do not play on my intelligence. When you tell me to read, I have read. I will continue to read. Not only have I read, and I can clearly see. Now, I don't know
interrupted him, and he's interrupting the other guy.
And many. What is the difference between countless and many? Can you please give me a working definition for that?
I will accept changing countless to many. In the document.
Okay, I'm going to have to please let Priscilla speak. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. I agree. I think this is not the time to compromise on our values. And I don't know what to follow up on Commissioner Thompson's question. How many is many? We, over the last 10 years, the Youth Justice Coalition has done a report finding that in LA County, over 600 people have been killed by the police. Now, some significant portion of that is the sheriff's department. And part of the problem is that the sheriff's department doesn't systematically keep track of how many people it is killing. It's just that many. They don't keep track. And neither apparently does the district attorney's office. So frankly, Commissioner Bonner, you have your perspective, but so do the rest of us. And if we need to vote on whether we need to include the term many, because in my opinion, I agree with Commissioner Tolentino, 1 is too many. And we know that last year Ryan Twyman was killed. We know about A.J. Weber. We know about people who died under mysterious circumstances in the jail. Those lives are lost, and they will never come back, and that is too many. And if we're going to argue about how many is enough to count here, that's a problem. So I agree with the inclusion of many, and if we need to vote, then we should. But Commissioner Bonner, you don't need to dictate what the rest of us want to express.
I'm going to weigh in here as chair. I'm going to weigh in here. Everybody hold for a minute. I want to make the suggestion that we keep countless other men and women, and that we include the many lives in Los Angeles County. I think smart people can come to this more inclusive statement. I don't think we're risking very much. Can we do that?
Oh, excuse me, Patty, does your last statement include killed at the hands of illegal actions of the sheriff?
Yes, it's what Mr. Williams said.
Then I agree.
Statement with Mr. Williams stated, we have countless other men and women and the many lives. And we're grounding it. The reason is we're grounding it in the work that we do and what is happening here right at home.
Right, and it doesn't only reflect numbers with the past year. I mean,
we're not going to tell you the numbers. That's why we're saying countless, because number one, we don't know, and many because one is too many. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Thank you.
Can we move on, everyone? Can we live with that?
Moving on.
Okay, thank you.
Patty, if I could just make a brief statement.
Go ahead.
I want it to be perfectly clear that I agree with this commission, Mr. Thompson. One life is too many. There have been a large number. We can mess around with the verbiage, but there have been way too many lives lost at the hands of law enforcement, not just in this county, but nationwide. As tragic as George Floyd's death is, and it is in fact tragic, beyond tragic. If it was a singular event, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. It is not a singular event. It is but one of many throughout this country. And yes, we're not charged with oversight for the entire United States of America. We are charged with the oversight of the LA County Sheriff's Department. And with that, I think we do need to acknowledge that there are far too many deaths at the hands of law enforcement in LA County. And anything we can say or do to make it clear that we are troubled by this, we think it is unacceptable, and we are committed to changing that scenario, then we should say it. I do not have any problem supporting this statement, and I want people to know that loud and clear. I am concerned about statements of illegality when I do believe that many of these deaths, perhaps if brought before the law, before the bar of justice officially, would have been deemed illegal. But unfortunately, that does not happen in this county. I think in fairness to everyone concerned, officers and victims alike, that should happen more often than it does. So there is in fact a reckoning on the actions of all of the people involved in these deaths. But that doesn't happen today. I hope that changes in the future. So I thank Commissioner Thompson for the fire in his belly as he brings this forward. I appreciate Commissioner Ochin, all the things she said, as well as all of the commissioners, Tolentino and everyone. I think this is a statement that needs to be made. Yes, we can sit here and dissect it forever, and I think we are getting maybe too far in the weeds, but I just want to make sure people understand how I feel on this. I absolutely support that we need to make this statement.
Okay. I want to promise to never do this again. I have to say that. This statement was, it was more of an intentionality and a reference. And we did get into the weeds. I'm not sure we're making it better, but at least we're going to get it done. So now there was one other, civil unrest anarchy was changed to civil unrest. And you want to argue about little, too much? Do you want to argue about that?
Madam Chair, may I respectfully, we have made it a lot better. We've listened to the comments from the public, many of whom made these comments. So I appreciate your frustration that it is not the most fun to wordsmith, but it's important. We spent 15 minutes making this much better, and I'm very much in support of it. And Commissioner Harris, thank you for your comments on that. I think that, at least from my perspective, despite the fact that there haven't been formal findings on that, doesn't mean that those acts weren't illegal. And I think we are well within our ability to say that they were. And I think that you're making that distinction, and I appreciate that. But I think where this statement is well within the bounds, we could say a lot more. But this is a very good start.
And I think
And I agree.
I think the way that we're going to say a lot more is if we can move into really meaningful oversight. This is the problem that we have, and we've heard that from the speakers also. I would like to reference a letter. I would like to reference two things and why we look weak in a lot of ways to the public. And that is number one, the sheriff of LA County has publicly said that oversight is not for him. So we are dealing with that. Now, whether or not that puts handcuffs on us is going to be up to us. The other thing is that we inquired, Mr. Williams and I sent a letter to the sheriff inquiring about the incident. I'm going to try to pull that up right now. The incident last week of May 28th. We sent a letter on May 28th asking about the vehicle stop and use of force that took place on May 27th. On May 29th, we got a response saying that they were following up, they're investigating, they arrested some people, they let some people go. I'm paraphrasing. But this is what it says. Given that the event occurred on May 27th, your untimely request on May 28th is inappropriate. Our request is deemed inappropriate because of the timing. Whether we ask that day or we ask a week later, we have an interest in knowing and we have a responsibility to inquire. So we got scolded.
Madam Chair, I call for the question. I'm prepared to vote.
Okay.
In favor. Look, I just want to say I don't approve of I don't agree with every word in here, but I do agree with the thrust of the statement. I'm prepared to vote for it.
Okay.
Suggestion also that the title of the statement should include the killing of George Floyd and the civil unrest. I think that's the focus of this statement, and what follows is the civil unrest.
Yes.
Yes, we can incorporate that, I believe, yes.
Thank you.
We have a second. Everyone in favor of adopting this resolution, this statement, which I guess is considered a resolution as our practice. Everyone please say aye.
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 I abstain.
Very good. And no opposition. I believe that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for your efforts and your, what's the word? Your persistence. That's the word.
We're just getting started.
Okay, I want to take just a quick break. Let's do like a 4-minute break. Let's come back. 4 minutes. We'll be right back, everybody.
You with the ears. Should have been writing notes. Mental notes don't help so much.
1-minute break, and then we're starting. It said I can't come down for an hour. I end at 11:30, so that's.
Patty, you're not muted.
Are we coming back?
Yep.
I'm here.
Let's listen to the bell.
That's not weird at all. Some mouths are starting to salivate.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I appreciate the passion of each and every one of you that you bring to this work that we do together. So let's move to item number 2B regarding the LA County Sheriff's Department's efforts to address COVID-19, the issues within the jails. We've established an ad hoc committee to review these matters. We've all felt that this is a matter of urgency. Today, we're going to hear from our vice chair of the ad hoc committee, vice chair of the commission, and chair of the ad hoc committee, Commissioner L. Rubin, as well as Assistant Sheriff of Custody Operations, Bruce Chase. And we'll start with Commissioner Rubin, who will set the stage.
Great, thank you. There are many, many issues which keep increasing. So I'll try and give some highlights, and then we can have some further discussions. At our last meeting, we asked for policies and procedures regarding how the sheriff manages COVID-19 in the jail. That specific request was made by fellow Commissioner Priscilla Osen. We've not received that. Despite several requests, what we did receive was 362 pages that don't spell this out. We need to see actual written policies, because somebody once said, policies that aren't written aren't worth the paper they're not written on. I'm not so sure, and I would like to be found wrong, that the sheriff does have written policies on this subject. Next, we received some reports from Cheryl Grills, who so eloquently spoke at the last commission meeting about the inspections that she had done at several jail facilities, and her comments at the last meeting and in her written materials raised a lot of issues. And we still don't know, because we haven't heard from the sheriff, if the sheriff has really looked into her concerns about some inmates, trustees, for example, being held back, and why there was no early release. We haven't received, and Cheryl Grills noted this, there's no data on testing. She found in several of the facilities masks aren't worn. There's no deep cleaning. It sounds a mess. Now, since the horrific killing of George Floyd, and the support and the demonstration and the marches, some reports, I saw something in the LA Times this morning that said that over 3,000 individuals had been arrested, and what we don't know is how many of them are in fact in LA County Jail. Even if there were a small percentage of the 3,000, it exacerbates all of the concerns about COVID-19 and what the sheriff is doing and what the sheriff is not doing. The sheriff did move early on to release some inmates, but if he's now getting an influx of any number, whatever that is, it raises lots of issues. Who's being tested? Where they're housed, what the housing situation is. So we need to know that. The other component of this, which is a little different, but does fit in the mix, is that one of the things that we were concerned about was the numbers that had been referred to the district attorney to release. Now, the letter from the district attorney's office indicated that it received a list of 3,500 cases, and they agreed to release 894. Somehow that doesn't seem enough. and their standards, such as they are, really work to not release. And so that is a portion of the work that we are looking at. What is, aren't there more individuals who should be released because of the nature of their offenses, and really help get the numbers down to try and at the same time get a handle on COVID-19. So that is really a very shorthand version. One of which I didn't mention is bail being imposed for those inmates or those arrestees. I saw one report that indicated that perhaps the district attorney was going to require bail, which I think is unfortunate. So with that, I will ask if there are any other of the ad hoc members who want to add into what I just said?
Yes, this is Priscilla. So I want to say a couple of things. One is just how non-responsive the documents that were given to us were. So as Lael just mentioned, we got a briefing book that had about 300 pages of unhelpful information. So, for example, we were given copies of Public Request Act letters that were made by the ACLU and other media outlets. I don't know why we were given those things, and there wasn't anything included that had anything that was responsive to those requests. We were sent emails between different members of the Sheriff's Department leadership that didn't specifically go into detail about how they're handling COVID-19. We were also given daily bulletins where the same paragraph repeated over and over again about temperature checks and so forth, but without a detailed approach to how the Sheriff's Department is managing COVID-19. I want to tell you about some of the things that were in those reports that seem to me to be frivolous to and completely unrelated to what we asked for. So, for example, one of the bulletins talked about the number of masks that inmates were told, people inside were told to make for staff and other people inside the facility. We got a briefing that talks about how deputies can keep their homes clean and how they can talk to their children about COVID-19. One daily briefing talked about toilet paper hoarding that was going on at the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, whether pets can get coronavirus, how to shop for essential food and items, how to obtain a mortgage and student loan mortgage relief and student loan forbearance, and how COVID-19 is affecting the world of sports, and how meat shortages might affect your life. And this is on May 6th, when the number of cases was skyrocketing. Today, we are at over 2,300 people who have tested positive for COVID-19, and well over 5,000 people who are in quarantine because of exposure to COVID-19. Now, this is certainly low because the Sheriff's Department has not done universal testing. Now, hopefully, because of the leadership of the Board of Supervisors, universal testing will be taking place and will be completed in the next few weeks. But I'm just at a loss as to how the lack of seriousness, especially when one person has died of COVID-19, and that person's death is on the hands of the Sheriff's Department and, frankly, on the DA's office for not acting swiftly enough. If we don't get a response, I fear that we will continue to have to subpoena these documents that the Sheriff's Department is unwilling to provide and seemingly unwilling to create policies for the issue for COVID-19. When I looked at Cheryl Grill's report on behalf of the Civil Brand Commission, she lays out some really troubling things. For example, there are some dorms that have been put on quarantine, and yet people are moving in and out of them. Dorms that have been put on quarantine aren't having routine temperature checks like they're supposed to. And this is all happening. There's not social distancing, and people are sleeping well within 6 feet of each other on bunk beds that are bolted to the floor. People are not wearing masks, and populations are not going down. They've plateaued. This is a crisis, and the Sheriff's Department, at least from what we've seen, is not reacting swiftly enough. We need to see the policies. If they don't exist, they need to be created, and they need to be created immediately. That's all.
Commissioner Thompson here. Can you hear me, Chair Lady?
I think Commissioner Rubin was speaking, but we couldn't hear her. I'll come.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say was, if the other members of the ad hoc don't have anything in addition at this point in time, I think we need to have Assistant Sheriff Chase respond to some of these concerns. And so I'd like to hear from him as well.
Commissioner Thompson, did something you wanted to say, or do you want to move to?
Yeah, Chair Lady, thank you. I will hold my peace until the response of the next speaker.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Okay, please, you have the floor, Assistant Sheriff Chase.
Hi. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for inviting me back. I know it was kind of a tough morning for the topic and getting that ironed out. So I'll try not to belabor any of my points. I do think there's not many of us who could have imagined the course of our world, or the course our world would have taken, in just 2 short weeks since you all last convened. So as if the challenges of COVID-19 were not enough, the collective pain inflicted on an already disparately impacted segment of our society last week in Minneapolis, as we all witnessed the death of Mr. Floyd, has caused us all to have to evaluate some of our own failings. And so nothing I could say would be adequate on that topic, but I did just want to pay my respects. Many people have no idea the struggles some in our communities endure on a daily basis. And at some point, our empathy is not enough, so hopefully we can all work towards a positive change. And it's just another indication, as you guys all discussed this morning, that oversight and accountability to the community is necessary and helpful, in my opinion. So you asked me today to update you on the status of our efforts with COVID-19 in the jails. And the first thing, I'm already going to have to apologize for the policies. I'm not sure if you're referring to it, because we did deliver something yesterday and it was posted on the web last night, so it didn't get to you in a timely manner. But if that's the document you're referring to, there was something earlier that was posted that wasn't very helpful, that I think did include some of those, like the ACLU letter Professor Ocean referenced, and something else. But the package that we delivered was vetted by County Council, and includes directives and shift briefings, and just in a case like this where we're just a couple months into an incident, just for clarity, directives and custody briefings that come out from us have the same weight to our personnel as an actual policy. So anything that says directive or shift briefing, those are equivalent to orders, so they carry the same weight. But I will work to figure out if we have some other things that might be more helpful. There was also copies of all the instructional videos that we show the inmates. There's copies of all the signage that's around all the facilities. But obviously, we need to make sure that you guys get the things that you are looking for that are responsive.
Excuse me, on the subject at the moment. We did get the 372, 392 pages, but in the past, when we have requested policies, even though we, pull teeth to get it, there is a document, part of your policy manual, that is your policy. And if you haven't officially published it, at least you have a draft. We're certainly able to wade through 392 pages, but you must have part of your policy manual that you can provide for us and to members of the public.
Yes, so all the directives are policies. They just are, that's the way we can immediately implement them. The policy making process sometimes slows down the implementation. And so, like in an emergency state, as when the COVID pandemic hit us, we needed to get orders out immediately on some of the behavior that needed to occur. So that's why they were done as directives and briefings. But we'll look and see. Generally, we do follow some of that up with policies that need to stay in place. Some of the directives are specific to the COVID response, so leaving them as directives, they may stay as directives, but certainly we'll look and see if we have any of the policies in draft form. I'd be willing to share those with you. and also the custody daily briefings that Professor Ocean was referring to. Yeah, those are intended for our personnel, and it's just a snapshot that we were briefing them as well as the incarcerated population on a daily basis. But I apologize if some of them seem trivial. They're geared more towards our personnel to try and get the buy-in on how serious the situation is and what they needed to do to protect themselves, because part of our strategy was trying to protect our personnel from bringing COVID-19 back into the jails, which is one of our responsibilities. But I hope that answers that question. I'll start with the fact that as you guys have previously mentioned and some of the public speakers mentioned, Dr. Ferrer announced on Monday that, with heavy hearts, we had our first COVID-19 patient pass away in our custody on Sunday morning, shortly after 11 a.m. And just briefly, that individual was transferred to our custody from state prison near the end of February. He was housed in a single-person housing area because of his security level. In the middle of May 15th, he came down with symptoms and was transferred to the Los Angeles County Jail Board Acute Care Hospital area after displaying COVID symptoms and because he had multiple underlying health conditions. And despite the best efforts of the medical staff, he did pass away on the 31st. With that individual, he was somebody that was previously identified to be screened on one of our lists, sent to the justice partners and the court. However, when they reviewed his case, due to the serious and violent nature of the charges he was being held for, he was deemed ineligible for release. He was actually, and you guys have also mentioned other people have passed away. We have a robust healthcare system in the LA County jails due to our size and the nature of the fact that we do get people who have a lot of health conditions when they're remanded by the courts, those that are deemed necessary to remain in custody. So this was the first person, or 14th person to pass away in the jails so far this year, but only the first COVID patient out of to date, as was stated, we have more than 2,000 positive cases. And let me go into the.
I think that there was reference to a pregnant woman at CDRF died of COVID-19.
So that was a confusion. So Dr. Ferrer, when she was announcing she announced the first death of a pregnant female in Los Angeles County, and then she then segued into announcing the first death of an inmate in LA County. So that woman was in a hospital outside. She was never incarcerated. So it's still tragic, but yeah, that woman was in the community under hospital care, and I think Dr. Ferrer mentioned she had underlying health conditions. We did recently have a pregnant female, because we're testing every single individual on intake. We've been doing that since, for the females, it started April 30th, and for the males, it started May 1st, so that's continuing. And just within the last 2 weeks, we had a female who was in her first trimester that came into custody and tested asymptomatic positive. That's the positive for COVID, but where they're not actively displaying any symptoms of illness. But we worked quickly to identify a community placement program, and so that individual has been released from custody and was placed in the community. And so Judge Espinosa and Dr. Ochoa and the Office of Diversion and Reentry continue to work steadfastly. I believe we still do have 10 pregnant females in our custody at this time, but none of them have COVID. I wanted to go over briefly just some of the numbers today. Well, our people, we actually have done the initial testing. In fact, Correctional Health Services finished ahead of schedule yesterday at the PDC facilities. So to date, we've conducted close to 6,781 is what I had this morning. There's going to be a few more when we get the next tally, but those are all, that's all universal testing in the housing areas. we've done a total of a little over 2,000 tests on people that have been symptomatic, so 2,051. So we correctional health has done more than 8,000 tests of individuals in our custody. And then since we're testing everyone on intake, that process will be ongoing. Because Correctional Health Services finished their testing plan yesterday, that means we've tested all housing areas, and we're going to move back to going through the facilities on everybody who declined, because it's not a forced process. So there were individuals that refused to be tested initially. So their next phase that they've got in their plan next week is to go offer tests individually to everyone in our system who's still with us that actually declined the offer.
I'm sorry, Bruce, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In the daily briefings, it says that there are some 6,000 asymptomatic tests conducted by CHS that have happened. And you just said all housing units have been tested. Are you telling me that there's 12,000 people in the jail and 6,000 of them refused? Because it sounds like only half of them have been tested.
Yeah, so we'll have to go look, because that wouldn't correlate with our numbers. You're correct, Max.
Okay, so because the impression I've gotten is that CHS is working on universal testing, but hasn't gotten there. So I'm a little, that's why I raised that issue. I'm uncertain about whether or not we've really tested it.
Yeah, so I'm showing 6,781 asymptomatic tests, and let's see, I do have, but it all, it also takes into account the those that are moving in and out of the facilities, Max. So there may be a gap there where.
No, absolutely. There probably are more than 12,000 people who passed the jail in that time. Yeah. So if we tested everybody, the number would be more than double the number of tests we say we've had. But it's way short of the number of people, even if there had been no movement in the jail. So it seems to me like from those statistics, we can't possibly have tested everybody.
So yeah, we get the numbers from Correctional Health, so I'll speak with.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
Oh no, that's fine, because I'm just looking at the numbers they gave me, and these would have been from Monday. Because again, Correctional Health Services keeps all these the testing statistics because it's a medical procedure. But they've tested so far 2,900, well, as of Monday. So this will be over 3,000 now, but 2,908 tested on intake, and that would be between IRC downtown for the males and for CRDF for the females, and shows as.
I'm sorry. Do you have what the number of the jail population is today?
Yeah, so that was another one of your questions. So today, the jail population is 12,065. Last night it was, yesterday it was 12,105, so it went down slightly again. So we have kind of stabilized, as you guys have all pointed out, in the last few weeks. But we have not seen a big influx from the civil unrest. So I do know that we have IRC booking teams that go into the field that assist with processing some of the individuals that are detained. And the overwhelming majority are being issued citations for misdemeanor violations of curfew violation or failure to disperse. But so the numbers related to serious felonies with looting, we haven't seen an influx. We have had a couple of days where the courts have been either closed or closed early, so there could still be individuals being held at station facilities and other agencies' jails that we don't have yet. But it will be a concern of ours if we need to deal with an influx, because we still are trying to maintain open space in the housing areas to the extent that we can spread people out due to the COVID. And I think I jotted some notes down. Sorry, there was so much. I think we need to do a better job getting you some of this information. I think we went over the things that I jotted down, but there was a question too that it was posed about the demographics of those that have tested positive so far. So I'll go over that unless somebody still has some questions about what we've already talked about.
Yeah, I actually do. What have you done to respond to Cheryl Grills's concerns in her reports that she issued, both from, visit last month and concerns about the trustees? I mean, and as fellow Commissioner Osen mentioned, the concern about hygiene and about masks, and what have you done to respond to her?
So we have answers to most of her questions, and if they haven't been transmitted to her already, we will make sure she gets that. We actually went through the list of the 28 trustees that had concerns, and double checked to make sure that there were no individuals being held simply to hold them for their inmate worker status. We also checked into each one of her questions. If you want me to go through them individually, or would it be easier just to get that information sent to Dr. Brill?
Why don't you give us a general overview? Have you, if you have rectified some of her concerns, that would be helpful to know that. If you're still working on it, that's helpful.
So we went through and vetted to make sure that nobody was eligible for release, and then the education process to make sure they understood how they earned work credits and where they were in their sentence. We actually did address the laundry issue, which was a big concern. So we directed the facility immediately so that if anybody conducts deep cleaning or is done with their shift cleaning and needs a fresh set of linens, they're given now, not linens, excuse me, a fresh set of clothing. So we're doing clothing exchange. And then we checked with the food services, because that was another concern. And we have had to make contingency plans. So see, I'll read the answer, because inmates reported and the kitchen staff and director confirmed that the inmates were receiving emergency meals more often than not. And they're prepackaged meals consisting of things like a burrito, cookies, milk, and carrots. CRDF prepares meals for others outside of CRDF, and workers are brought in from other locations to make sure that those services aren't interrupted. But during times of emergencies, Food Services Bureau has to implement contingency plans. And we also have to continue to provide meals to, there's 33 contract cities that need meals delivered to their station jails. So it's been trying, but they're working diligently, and I believe the quarantines down at CRDF, I'm getting buried in paper here, but there's very little impact right now down at CRDF. In fact, CRDF has been one of our least impacted facilities. The women have had tremendous success down there. In fact, the positive rate is 4% and holding, but thankfully. But so those two issues were addressed right away. We have a whole host of other things we worked on as far as the inmates wearing masks that she pointed out up at NCCF. We continue to recommend that the individuals wear their masks as often as possible, even while they're inside their housing area. But we do mandate now at all the facilities that when inmates are traversing the hallways or walking outside of their own housing area, that they are wearing a mask. But it's ongoing because the size of our system, it requires constant vigilance, and I can't say that there's 100% compliance 100% of the time, but we are actively engaged with trying to enforce that.
You know, we only have, excuse me for inserting myself, but we only have 10 minutes left to this meeting, Commissioner Rubin, which also means we're not going to be able to get to the public comment. I'm trying to think about, first of all, continuing to follow up this committee right now. I hope you maintain your sense of urgency and continue to work very closely with Assistant Sheriff Chase, and possibly, because the way I'm looking at it now, I feel like our ad hoc committee work is so important, and that each committee is, convening, looking at where we've been, and beginning to make some recommendations of where we need to go. So I really want to suggest that. And so, Commissioner Rubin, your committee, I guess what we want you to do is to continue what you're doing and meet with whomever, whether it's going back to Commissioner Grills, Assistant Sheriff Chase, and others, and then maybe we have to start moving toward ad hoc committee reports, so that we have documents that we can work off of while presentations and conversations are being made. That's my thinking right now for us to. There's so much, there is so much to engage with right now, and this is a pivotal moment for all of us to do the best work we possibly can. So I'm suggesting that. Is there any closing that you want to make, or next step that you want to make around the COVID-19 issue, Commissioner Rubin?
Well, I think that, thank you for your suggestion. We have a lot of issues and thoughts about where we're going, but I think it is essential that the sheriff be as responsive as possible to requests for information and documents. And I certainly got the sense today that Assistant Sheriff Chase heard that loud and clear, because until we have know exactly what the sheriff is doing or not doing, it really is not going to move us forward. So that is my final pitch at this moment to the sheriff.
Can I also add, chime in here?
Sure.
So, what I heard today was that we asked specifically for policies either that have been finalized or more likely in draft form. We didn't hear anything about policies in terms of how COVID-19 is being managed, from intake through the management of folks who are in different pods in terms of the population. And that's the critical question. What policies does the sheriff have in place? And we have not been given an adequate answer despite multiple requests. And the fact that one person has already died should sound an alarm bell if over 2,300 people who have tested positive hasn't already. We don't have time to waste. So I hope that as soon as this meeting is over, Assistant Sheriff Chase, I know this isn't all on you, but I hope that you will be able to get on your colleagues about moving faster. We have too many people in the facilities to safely manage. What is the plan for reducing the population further? We need to reduce it, in my estimation, by at least half in order for people to be safe, in order for our community, in order for the people who work in custody to be safe. So I hope that there is a sense of urgency, and I hope that you move to get us those documents at least by tomorrow, because we've been waiting now for almost 2.5 weeks, so that we can do our job, so that we can make recommendations. We can't make recommendations if we're not given adequate information.
So, I'll see what we have that wasn't given to you. But again, just for clarity, directives and shift briefings carry the weight of policy on the sheriff's department. They're mandated.
I understand. can I just read this to you in terms of what we were given? Okay, and if this is what you're summarizing as a policy, what it says on the daily briefings for coronavirus, and this is repeated on every single one. It says we have been screening, isolating, and testing inmates for several weeks, both upon intake as well as from various housing areas who have flu-like symptoms and a fever over 100.4, or who answer certain potential COVID-19 high-risk screening questions. Then it goes on to talk about quarantining. That is too general, and it repeats on every single one of these daily briefings, if that's what you're referencing as policies.
So, yeah, I apologize for the confusion there. Those are not policies. Those are just daily briefings for our people. There's within the same, and they're meant to be general, and those were actually initiated to try and keep our employees informed of what was going on. But those are just talking points. Those are not the directives I'm referring to. So within the same set of documents you got, there's custody COVID directives, but I'm looking at it. There's more that we might have been able to use. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes. And do you have a page? Do you have a page number that you can refer me to in the PDF? Because I looked through this entire document and I did not see the bulletins that you're referring to.
I'm gonna have to look to see how it was put together and pasted, because the way it's delivered to me, it's electronic and there's folders, and then so I'll try and email you that information. But I also need to check, and there is urgency, so I don't want to hold up the meeting, Patty. But I understand, and I've heard your concerns. Just know that we're working diligently every day. We've had an emergency operations center in custody dedicated solely to managing and mitigating COVID-19 and directing actions of our employees and coordinating with healthcare services. So we have had that going since the second week of March, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dedicated solely to trying to protect the inmates and the welfare and the safety of the people that are in custody and provide them adequate health care. And so this morning, as of this morning, the numbers where we have 170 people in custody that are actually actively sick. The other patients are asymptomatic positive, so they haven't displayed any symptoms. And we've had over 700 individuals who have been treated and recovered.
Okay, so thank you for that. I just want to encourage as much communication and collaboration. I know that you have that intention, Assistant Sheriff Chase.
Absolutely.
With the committee, and so that maybe some of these conversations could get ironed out, so that when you're coming forward and we welcome you back again, so that when we're presenting and to the full commission and the public,